Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another What's for Dinner on Keto, easy keto meal ideas, and easy keto recipes. If you're new here, welcome to our channel. I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and joining the crew. We post a new keto recipes cooking video every single Sunday. We always strive to do new stuff each week, and we really look forward to you joining us and seeing what we're up to. Please excuse my voice this week. I have come down with something and I am struggling through this voiceover. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I wanna catch the wave. Up first, we made this low-carb Italian wedding soup. This was absolutely delicious. The recipe seemed a little intimidating, but it came together really quickly. So to start with, we put a pound of ground beef into a bowl and then added a half a cup of crushed pork rinds, a half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 3 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, 3/4 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper, and 1 large egg. And then I just got my hands in there and started combining that up and rolling it into little teeny tiny meatballs. When I first started making these, I'm used to making bigger meatballs, so I was making them like an inch wide. And then I quickly went back and corrected and tried to make them all about half an inch. This is a recipe by the most brilliant and talented Carolyn Ketchum over at All Day I Dream About Food. And of course, I will have it linked down below in the description box. And here is the whole tray finished. If you want to do these ahead, you could, but I just did them right before and left them sitting out. Took 2 tablespoons of avocado oil to a big pot, added a 1/4 cup chopped onion, roughly 4 celery stalks chopped, teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and just sauteed that down. And then after that, I added about 2 teaspoons of minced garlic to the mix and went ahead and let that simmer for about another minute, just until it was cooked down really well. Then I added a teaspoon of dried oregano to the mix, and again kept letting it simmer before adding 6 cups of chicken stock. You could use bone broth or whatever, I prefer the chicken stock. And then I just heated that and cooked it until everything was tender and boiled. And then I added 2 cups of cauliflower rice. I just used frozen one. And then I added my meatballs to the pot. And then just cut it down just below boiling. And it only took about 5 minutes for the meatballs to cook up. And they just kind of float to the top when they're done. And then you're supposed to add spinach leaves. But I had a little bit of superfood greens left in the fridge, which is mostly baby spinach, and then it's also got some other stuff packed in there, and I didn't want that to go to waste, so I just added what I had left of that. But the recipe called for 2 cups of packed spinach leaves. And then I just cooked that down until it wilted and came together a little, and here it is all plated up. You could top this with a little bit of Parmesan cheese if you wanted. I just left it plain. And this was a big hit. My husband was begging for soup. Next up was this yummy crock pot recipe. Crystal, I was thinking about you when I filmed this because you said that you loved crock pot recipes. It is a balsamic pork. The recipe I will link down below that I was inspired by. Of course, I never follow the recipe strictly. It used like a tenderloin, I think. But Food Lion had country style pork ribs on sale, boneless ones, which is basically just Boston butt sliced up. And so I took about 3 pounds of that and used it. So to start with, I added some olive oil to the bottom of my crock pot, about a tablespoon. And then I added a teaspoon of minced garlic, and then I kind of rolled the pork in it, washed my hands really well, and then I added another teaspoon of minced garlic on top of the pork, and then my kind of marinade wet ingredients to that, which is a half a cup of balsamic vinegar, about a tablespoon of Worcestershire, and 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos. And then of course, salt and pepper always. I also added a pretty nice amount of red pepper flakes to this, but it did not make it too spicy. My toddler has been living off of this all week. She loves it. Every time I open the refrigerator, she points to the leftovers and says, "Ribs?" I did cook it on high for like 6 to 8 hours on high, which is overkill, but look, beautiful. And then I just served it with a steam bag of broccoli and cauliflower that I seasoned with some rotisserie chicken seasoning and sea salt, pepper, and butter. This was our all-time favorite meal and probably my most favorite keto adaptation I've made to date. I based the quesadilla part off of a recipe from the Diet Doctor, and I followed that to a T to make those. And then the rest of it I just threw together off of, a regular quesadilla like what I used to make. So I did take a New York strip. These are from Costco, so they're really thick, and I made sure to slice it while it was slightly frozen. It did hurt my soul a little bit to take some of that fat off of it, but I did. And then after I got it shaved down, I went over to my mixing bowl and added 2 eggs and mixed those together with 2 egg whites until they were just like foamy. And then I added 6 ounces of room temperature cream cheese and mixed that up until it was all creamy and smooth. And then I just took my dry ingredients, which were a half a teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoon of ground psyllium husk powder, and a tablespoon of coconut flour. And I just put this in a little prep bowl and mixed them together with a fork, and then added them to my wet mixture. And I went ahead and beat that, just mixed it thoroughly until it was almost the consistency of pancake batter. Just let it sit for a little while, probably about 10 minutes until it thickened up a little. Then I took a regular cookie sheet and lined it with parchment paper. My oven is preheated at 400. And I just poured this all out evenly on the parchment paper, and then used a rubber spatula to just kind of smooth it over into the shape of a rectangle. I tried to do this as evenly as possible because this is what we're going to cut into tortillas to make our quesadillas. And I really took my time with this to make sure that it was really even. I didn't want any pieces to be too thin and burn, or pieces to be too thick and be doughy. Then I just put it in the oven for 10 minutes. Went ahead and took my shaved beef and I just eyeballed it, some cumin, a little bit of onion powder, and of course, salt and pepper. And then I had preheated my air fryer to 350. It's the first time I ever tried to cook like steak in it. Turned out perfect. I did set the timer for 9 minutes, but I kind of watched that. And then by the time I got done with that, my tortillas came out perfectly. You can see it's just a little brown on the ends. I thought maybe it wasn't done all the way in the middle, so I kind of peeled it up to see. It was perfect. I just used a pizza cutter to slice this into 6 even rectangles. If you wanted these to be circular, you could do them in circular pans, or you could fry them in oil on the stove, but I didn't care. And there's my steak after it's done in the air fryer. Like I said, just cook it to the temperature you like. I just used a pan, kind of a flat pan, and added about a tablespoon of butter to it, just like you would a regular quesadilla. Took 1 part of my tortilla into the pan, added a Mexi melt amount of cheese. Again, I just eyeballed this. Then I added some of my steak on top, and then a little bit more cheese on top of that, just to help the 2 sides of the tortilla stick together. And because honestly, like, you could never have too much cheese. And I just let that cook probably no more than a couple minutes on that side, and then used a spatula to flip the whole thing over. I usually burn quesadillas, but I did a good job with these. I was proud of myself. And then I just cooked it up on the other side. Here it is all sliced up. I served it with a little bit of Taco Bell hot sauce in a container, some Holy Moly guacamole that I get at Costco, and some sour cream. This was so delicious. You can make the tortillas ahead of time and just put them parchment paper between them and stick them in the fridge. I did save 1 batch to cook later for my husband. It was still good, but not as crispy. Next up, we have this very, very quick, very, very cheap, simple weeknight keto meal recipe. This is basically a tuna casserole, glorified, ketoized. Took 3 tablespoons of butter into a saucepan, melted that down, added about 3.5 ounces of cream cheese to it, let that all melt together. I just whisked it up until it was kind of melting. Then I added a cup of heavy whipping cream. and let it finish mixing and combining pretty well before I added 1/4 of a cup of Parm cheese. I just used your regular cheap grated one. And then 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then really, I went more heavy-handed on that cayenne pepper than I wanted to, but the cheese really made up for it and made it a mild spice. I still didn't take a chance and serve it to my kids, but it wasn't very hot. Of course, salt and pepper, and I just brought that to not a real boil, just like slightly bubbling, and then I turned the heat off to let it thicken and cool a bit. Meanwhile, I steamed some Kirkland's broccoli. This is 16 ounces of broccoli. You could use more, you could use less. I dumped it in the bottom of a casserole dish, and then this is 3 cans of tuna. It's about 15 ounces of tuna fish. I just used your regular, dark tuna, and dumped that out evenly over the broccoli, and then I just poured the cheese sauce on top evenly. I did preheat my oven to 350 for this recipe. And then I just had some shredded cheddar in the fridge that I wanted to get rid of, so I didn't measure this part out either. I did use a recipe for this from Have Butter Will Travel, so I will link that down below in case you want to have exact measurements. Then I popped it in the oven for 20 minutes, and here it is all done. This definitely reminded me of a little girl. My mom always made tuna casseroles, so very tasty if you're a tuna fan, and very quick. And you can adjust it to make it, family friendly for everybody. So there you go, guys. That's this week's What's for Dinner on Keto meals, idea, recipes, yada, yada, yada. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please stick around and hit that subscribe button to see more. We post keto recipe videos every single Sunday. And occasionally we sprinkle in some other videos during the week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment down below any recipes you'd like to see us tackle. And until next time, bye, guys.
Can pay to play, the sun is still won't get a cent from me. I mix the fit up with the side like it's a remedy. I mix it up inside the pot, watch it drip while it drop. Time to take it to the top. Chips all in the middle like it fall, no I won't flop. We gon' pop like a soda can top. To me this is nothing, call my bluff and I won't stop.